Greetings, friends. Welcome back to Head Above Water. This is Season 2. This is your host, Jason Charnick. It's the middle of July. Thanks for joining us. It's been a real long time since I put a show out, and I'm glad you guys have stuck around for Season 2. It's not been easy the last 4 months, the last 5 months now. Have been a tough time for a lot of people, and it has been for me as well, and I'm not used to that. And I've been doing a show about mental health and filmmaking, and because it's a very important topic to me, obviously, but never really thought I was going to get hit as hard as I have been during this shutdown. It's been tough to get work. A lot of productions are shut down. I work in post-production usually, so some of the things that shot I was able to keep working on, but once everything that was in the can was done, then things just kind of stopped. And you know, one of the things that I don't want to spend too much time on it during the opening of the show, but one of the things that I did want to talk about a little bit is when all the shutdowns and stuff happened back in March, there were a lot of memes and stuff going around about, you know, self-care, and which is, you know, important, obviously, but like, you know, don't, if you're not working, if you're struggling to be creative and struggling to write or shoot or edit or whatever you do, don't worry about it. Don't be hard on yourself. You don't have to be creative during this time. And other people were saying, wow, look at all this extra time we have on our hands. You know, we can create and do all this fun stuff. And some people have put out some amazing things over the last 4 months that wouldn't have been possible if not for this unfortunate circumstance that we all find ourselves in. And I did a couple of short things. I was messing around early on when, you know, it kind of felt like we would go back to normal eventually. But now that we're in a different place in the world a few months later, it's pretty obvious to me we're not going back to normal anytime soon. So I really got hit by this internal confusion of, you know, not being hard on yourself for not doing anything, but still wanting to create, wanting to do things, but not necessarily, you know, having avenues to do that. This podcast is my avenue, and I had kind of drifted away from it because, like I had said earlier in a post of mine online, I got depressed. I don't know what's going on in the world. You know, I don't know who's listening to anything that I have to say anymore, and it's not a comfortable feeling. It's not, you know, and hopefully maybe it'll push me to make this show better and push me to do, you know, other things in the future. But right now it just doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel organic. Also dealing with a lot of personal issues. Me and my wife have been trying to have a child over the past 3 years after we suffered a stillbirth, and we lost our daughter Shelby back in 2017. And we've been trying to have a child, and we've been doing IVF, and it hasn't worked. And we're talking about some other options and adoption and things like that. And all of this kind of is happening right in the middle of this huge health crisis. So having to go to the doctor wearing masks and take care and the distancing and all of that while trying to deal with fertility issues is also extremely difficult. But I don't want to really bog you guys down with any of the personal stuff. Although if you want to hear it, I'm more than happy to go on and on about it. But the show is really focused on filmmaking and creativity and trying to find our voice in this new day and age. So with that being said, I want to present you guys with an interview that I did before all the shutdowns and stuff happened with a dear friend of mine, Peter Sullivan. Peter is a writer, director, producer. His most recent film is Fatal Affair. It is out on Netflix today, July 16th. So please check it out. I don't know if my openings for our upcoming shows are going to be like this. I usually try to keep them brief. I try to keep them a little bit more uplifted. But sometimes I just don't feel the days of feeling uplifted have been few and far between over the past couple of months. But I do want to bring you guys some interviews. I do want to keep doing these shows, talk to people about how they're, you know, dealing with the pandemic, dealing with their current situations, and how they're keeping creative, how they're keeping upbeat, and how they're dealing with this new world that we live in for right now. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for sticking with me on Head Above Water. We're calling it Season 2. Welcome back to Season 2 of Head Above Water. Here's our first episode. Here's my interview with writer, director, producer of Fatal Affair and many other films, the great Peter Sullivan. Welcome. to this episode of Head Above Water. We have a very, very special guest for you guys today. I'm very excited to talk to him. We have director, filmmaker extraordinaire, Peter Sullivan from Secret Obsession is one of his latest. The
Secret Lives of Cheerleaders.
The Secret Lives of Cheerleaders, and the upcoming, are we allowed to even say that?
Fatal Affair.
So Peter and I have been friends for 25 years. I like to do a little at the beginning, talk a little bit about your origin story. So your origin story is a little bit of my origin story. We met at NYU.
Yes, we did.
Back in 1997.
Yep.
After I had graduated from college in Boston and took a film program at NYU. Yeah. And you were in the actual Tisch Film School.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about like your origin story, why you wanted to make movies, and what brought you to NYU, and where you're at now.
When I was starting out, obviously the days before YouTube and everything, it's like, the making of movies was kind of a mystery. It was something magical,
and it was made on film.
I know, and I you go back, and I remember. The day my parents told me that Star Wars wasn't real, that there really weren't spaceships and Jedi Knights and robots and, the stormtroopers and, we're just guys in suits and things like that. And I was like, okay, well, it can't be. I've seen them. They're flying through space. And that's, well, that's not real. I was like, well, I've seen it. How can that not be real? And then, so, I got a book of them in the library. It's like, the making of the Star Wars movies or whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at that.
And how old were you back then? When 8, 9, 10?
6 or 7, something like that. And then I just kind of became fascinated by it. And then, I tried my hand in writing. And then, of course, my parents had to tell me, well, you have to write movies that haven't been made already. Writing the script for The Empire
Strikes Back. I wrote Star Wars today. I was watching Star Wars and I just wrote Star Wars.
Write Star Wars. That's already been done. You need to come up with something else. And so that was sort of the beginning of it. And just kind of being fascinated with the idea of telling stories. And I remember writing scripts in like middle school and high school. I think I wrote my first feature length script with an adaptation of The Most Dangerous Game, which we just read in English class. And I thought, well, this obviously needs to be in space with an alien. So I wrote an outer space version of that, and then I continued and I made a short film in high school, which then got me into NYU. At that time, I wasn't quite ready to make the leap across the country. So that was about as far as I was going to go at that point.
And you grew up in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Shrewsbury outside of Worcester, which is about 40 minutes from Boston. So, I would not go to LA for another couple of years after that point. But yeah, that was, I ended up at Tisch, which was it's a great education. They tend to be a little more indie. They'd be talking about Jim Jarmusch, and I was going to see Independence Day. So that we had slight differences in our filmic styles, but it was great. I met a lot of people, yourself included, that have gone on to wonderful things and
great illustrious careers.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a little bit about your time at NYU. Then, when you go to NYU, Scorsese went there. Yeah. Oliver Stone went there. Mm-hmm. And just everyone who went there.
Yeah.
At the time, if you remember, because this was not yesterday, what is there like an immediate pressure on you to have to live up to? How did they frame your education? Do you have to live up to Scorsese Stone levels?
I think,
or do you put that on yourself? How does that affect? How do you deal with the history of that?
Like I said, there's very much an indie mindset. I mean, the filmmakers you talked about, the Scorsese, Oliver Stone, Spike Lee is another one,
right?
Who's kind of a constant presence there on campus. It is very much an indie mindset, and like I said, I was I was interested in commercial films, right. Star Wars, Vader the Lost Ark. I grew up going to the Church of Spielberg. Mm-hmm. I love, Scorsese. I love Goodfellas, but I was really, a Spielberg.
Had you applied to UCLA or USC?
I never applied to any of the.
So NYU you just wanted to stay back east.
Well, I did early acceptance.
Okay.
And so part of the deal with early acceptance is if you get in, you go.
You got to go.
You're committing. So
right.
I never got to the actual more traditional submission process where you send application to many schools. I had catalogs, but I never got that far. I looked at Syracuse, Ithaca, Emerson, and NYU. I think were the only ones that I actually toured. But to answer your question, because it's kind of indie, it's very much like, well, you go here and you raise money and you make a film. So, while I was in
the easy steps.
It's all easy. Yeah,
the easy
why
steps.
not? Everyone should do that.
Right.
I would say the big influence on what your career is supposed to look like is, I happened to be going to school right when the indie world was just absolutely exploding.
Right.
And you had people like Kevin Smith.
Yep.
Bobby
Tarantino,
Rodriguez,
Hal Hartley, Jim Jarmusch.
So, these were guys that were
anything from
going
Miramax.
out, getting, maxing out 30 credit cards to make their film. And, here comes Clerks, so El Mariachi. And that was what you were supposed to do. And I remember thinking, I'm not sure about that. And I'm wondering, for every Clerk, how many people maxed out those credit cards and just did nothing but spend the next 30 years paying them off.
Right.
And I remember there were a couple people that, oh yeah, we're going to raise money and we're going to make this movie. I remember this one guy that I remember talking to, and he had, $100,000. He was going to make the next Clerks, and we never did.
Even the original Clerks was made for a fraction of that.
But I remember, there was that element, and then also, there was that expectation. Oh, like, I'm going to win the NYU First Run Film Festival,
right?
And then a studio will see my work and pick it up, and that happened to one director from my class,
right?
By and large, that's not what I would call a real stable career plan,
right?
But that really was. I mean, these were the kind of things that were talked about because they never talked about, well, what do you do? Like, what do you do when you get out of school? What do you do for a living? How do you make a career out of any of this?
Right. Sustainability is the hot word of the day.
So,
but when you were at NYU, even though you were making, your projects and stuff there and doing the indie way, you always had an eye on big budget studio pictures. Like you knew what you wanted to do. So you never really felt any compunction to like I need to be better than this guy. My thing needs to be better. I wanted to make. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of competition anyway.
Yeah.
But you always had an eye on what you were doing, and you didn't kind of let any of that. Mess with your head.
I think I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing, and again, I think that was the one thing that was missing was just, okay, we're going to teach you how to use a camera. We're going to teach you how to make a little short film and tell a story. But that's not the same as teaching you how to, like you said, the sustainability of all of this. And so that was kind of the missing component. But I remember very clearly there was one day and we were doing our senior thesis project. And the way it worked is you would have to go in and you would write a short script and give it to the professor. And then he would decide who in the class would get to make their senior, the senior films, and who would get to make a film.
Well, that's a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all. And so I wrote a script that was a monster movie. It was kind of like I was just actually thinking about it this morning. It was kind of like, nowadays it would be a natural episode of Black Mirror or Twilight Zone or Tales from the Crypt or something like that, But that was what I wanted to do. And when he first read the script, he said, "This is great and it's so well written and so inventive or whatever." And then, a couple weeks later, it's like, "You're not going to make this film, and I'm not going to approve the script." And I was like, "Why?" It's like, "Well, you have to. I want you to make something from your heart, and I want you to, to tell a story that's meaningful to you." And I'm like, "Yeah,
I like
that's
monsters.
what this is." So what I ended up making for my student film was this sort of Scorsese-esque crime drama thing. But let's be perfectly honest. This monster movie was way closer to anything that I was interested
that you really that wanted
than that other film.
So you're already, I guess that's part of the education. You're already learning to deal with people who are trying to change your work.
but it's like how it's like how dare you try to tell somebody what they're interested in,
what's near and dear to their heart,
personal to them. And I'll give you a very funny how that story ended. So I remember when I was still developing this, and I got as far as designing the creature, and I was talking to a couple of talented effects artists from class about it. And I remember I met this one guy who worked with me at the media program, and he and his buddy were wanted to do monster effects or whatever, and they were into horror movies and stuff. So they were going to work on this creature for me, and I remember the guy's name. and apparently nobody told him that he couldn't make horror movies. And his name is Jeremy Saulnier.
Oh, that's a guy.
Yeah, and he was going to work on the monster. I mean, it's like, come on, guys. It's
right.
Like,
going to NYU has its benefits.
Don't tell people what's personal to them. Let them decide what's personal for them. Maybe what's personal to me is, a little Tales from the Crypt kind of, horror story.
And I obviously that interaction with your teacher had left an impression enough on you to remember it.
Well, literally thinking about it this morning.
Because I was coming over, or did you just
because I was like, hey, maybe I should, try to make that movie someday.
Hey,
could this movie be expanded? And I think the answer is no. I think it kind of, it's perfect for what it was, which was like a 20-minute short film. Right. I don't think I have any use for it today, but I still like the concept, and oh well.
But again, yeah, interesting that those are the formative moments that stay with you when you get started.
Right.
So we ended up shooting your thesis film, and we made it, and we got it out there, and then you moved out to Los Angeles.
Right.
And this was in about, I think, 1999. Maybe you might have moved out.
I moved out in 98.
So you moved out to Los Angeles and got started working in development. You always had an eye. This is, another one of the things that's been a common theme, just watching your career as it develops is, and it hand in hand with what your professor said, you had a very specific vision of what you wanted your career to be.
Yes.
You wanted to direct studio feature films.
I wanted to direct. I like I said, so I went to the school of Spielberg. That was sort of my. I loved those films. I loved Michael Bay films and Robert Rodriguez films, and I loved. To me, movies were a way to tell a story and entertain people. And there are people that make movies because they want to, explore the meaning of life, or get into the personal relationships, and that's all. That's all.
Yeah, it
well.
is.
But I really, just personally
wanted to entertain people.
Those are the movies that I gravitated towards, and that's what was interesting to me. But one of the things that I got out of film school really was a real education on a whole language of film. Like I said, I grew up watching Star Wars and Indiana Jones and that kind of stuff. But then going to NYU exposed me to the filmmakers and films that I hadn't really been exposed to before. They might have run on late night television, but I had never seen Citizen Kane. I'd never seen, some of the foreign films or old westerns, or John Ford and Frank Capra and movies like It's a Wonderful Life, Happened One Night. These are movies that I saw for the first time in film school, and they really meant something to me and kind of expanded my vision on what a movie could be and could accomplish. And so I tried to take that expanded, vocabulary and I thought, okay, now I'm going to go and I'm going to make theatrical films and, be the next Spielberg or,
right.
Tarantino or,
But you decided to do that in Los Angeles.
I liked going to school in New York, but I knew that the nexus of the industry really was LA. And even like, for example, when I was in film school, I had an internship at DreamWorks in New York, but it was the publicity department.
Right.
The production and everything were being done.
Not making movies.
They're not making
them out
the
after
movies.
they're done.
I think Spielberg came in and used the bathroom once, but that was like, that was not where, the magic was happening. So when I was in school, I had gotten a book, How to Get a Job in the Film and Television Industry. And in the back with a list, because it was the days before the internet, in the back with a list of companies that, allegedly were looking for interns. And I wrote to them, and one called me back and offered basically to hire me sight unseen, because I wasn't going to fly across the country just for a job interview, to spend the summer there working on what would turn out to be TV movies.
How many places would you say you got in touch with before you moved out to LA?
I don't remember how many I emailed in the book. I maybe sent out 10 or 15.
All right, so just a handful
letters.
Because you have NYU Tisch School for the Arts on your resume, and yet still and yes, you're getting started, but you have NYU on your resume.
Well, I didn't
people
know
were still
anybody.
like, we don't even want you as an intern.
Well, I didn't know anybody. What I did the following year is I actually did come out and interviewed with a bunch of companies, and I got in the door with quite a few of them the following year. But this was my first kind of foray into it, and so I figured, well, I'll just send a bunch of letters and send my resumes out. And this company that I knew very little about, and again, the internet was such in its infancy, you couldn't exactly just go on
Right.
Wikipedia.
These places did not have web pages.
I didn't know anything about them. I mean, nothing really, other than what it said in this book. And yet I uprooted myself and flew to LA and got a tiny bachelor apartment in West LA and slept on an air mattress for a summer.
And see, and this is one of the things, and I've spoken to a bunch of different people about it because, a lot of people feel the same way as you. Like Los Angeles is the center. It's the heart. I need to be where the action is. And I've met a lot of people, especially having been in South by Southwest. I've met a lot of Texas filmmakers and just filmmakers from around the world that don't want to, Canadian filmmakers that don't want to move to LA. They don't want to be in this situation. They still want to kind of make it on their own outside of here. But you always felt that Los Angeles was going to be your final destination, if you will.
Yeah. It has changed a little bit since then. I mean, for example, like I said, I grew up in Massachusetts, and back then there was no film industry in Massachusetts. I remember, I would call the Massachusetts Film Office had a hotline, and every week they would have a recording of films that were casting, films that were crewing up, whatever. And I mean, we're talking about industrials at this point. There's nothing meaningful going on. And now, of course, we got into tax credits and everything, and Massachusetts has become a production hub, and they're shooting all kinds of movies there. Little Peter Sullivan in this day and age, things might have turned out different. I don't know. I mean, I had never been on a film set until I got to NYU, and I still remember the first time I went on a student film that I was hired to be a PA. I mean, this is this little teeny film, student film set, but to me that was like, I just wandered into Hollywood.
All right, so you're out here in LA and you're getting started, and you're working for now Wilshire Court Productions, which is where we had worked for a little bit of time. Obviously, we knew each other from earlier, but that's where we had where things kind of sprung out from there.
Right.
So you're sleeping on an air mattress. You're living a very low pro lifestyle in LA, just kind of making do.
Right.
Going to work every day as a development assistant, just kind of getting things going. At any point when you were getting going, did you feel like it wasn't going to happen? Did that drag on you?
Well, I remember when I was working on a student film, and I remember the night very clearly. It was the middle of the night. We were doing an all-nighter in Pennsylvania at a defunct airport, I think it was, and I think we were like using it for like Area 51 or something. And there was a member on the crew that was kind of a dickhead, and he said to me, he's like, how how many films are written a year, and what makes you think you can do this? I forget this guy's name, Jason something or other. But anyway,
that's so funny because not the second part of it, but just that I have mentioned to be like, just so many movies do get made in a year. But
that kind of resonated with me, and I remember being at Wilshire Court, and being in the development department, just seeing all the scripts that would come in for consideration, and
behind every script is a person trying to make it.
Behind every script is a person trying to make it, and back then, I mean, again, before the internet, these scripts were all, they were printed, they were mailed in, messengered, what have you. Some of them came from agents, some of them came from lawyers, and whatever. And I mean, we're talking hundreds of them, and a lot of them would end up in file cabinets. And I remember they had shelves and shelves and shelves of these things. And just, I remember looking at the thing, how can I get noticed? How can I ever expect to stand out when there's so many? And again, that's something they don't really, other than the wisdom of Mr. Charnick, they don't teach you in film school. It's like, by the way, you're going to be in a pool with 500,000 other people trying to do exactly what you're doing. And I remember kind of being a little depressed about the whole thing. And I remember the head of development, the vice president of development at that time, who had hired me, sight unseen. Her name was Sharon Moore. And she, I was talking to her in the office, and she said, you know what? Don't think that way. And I have a feeling you're going to do it. And
that's all it took.
and I was like, well,
positive voice.
One positive voice. One positive, and so I went back. That was the summer between my sophomore and junior year, and I went, with that attitude. It's like, well, fine, I'm just going to keep trying until I do. And it was because of Wilshire Court and because of that book that I bought that one day that I did make it. I just didn't know how all the pieces were going to fit yet.
So how do you? And I think this can be very useful to a lot of people just getting started out. How do you? Was it as simple as just hearing an encouraging word from one person? How do you fight through that depression of just knowing you're, now you're the small fish in this big pond, and you have to, you need to be able to somehow fight through that. Like I said, was it just hearing one positive voice, or what kind of work did you do internally to force you to just keep pushing forward?
One, you have to almost ignore the odds.
And it's very hard to do that.
It's very hard, but you just kind of have to not think about it and just kind of stay positive. You also can't give up. I can't tell you how many people over the years that I've worked with, worked for, whatever, who have gone on to wonderful careers in other industries. But, I know there were plenty of people that came out, they were assistants, and I'm not sure what they expected, but, they gave up, they left. And it really, you have to be willing to endure, and you have to be willing to kind of, look, being an assistant, it pays terribly. I did run up credit card debt. You're sleeping on an air mattress. You're willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen. And it's just the perseverance, that you have to kind of
just keep going
keep going at it. And yeah, it helped to have an encouraging word. It also helped. Look, maybe all these other people didn't make it, but these people over here did. And if they did, it was great. But it is discouraging. And I remember clearly, without mentioning names or whatever, after graduating and coming out, coming back out to LA. So now I have, not only do I have, NYU on my resume, I have the diploma.
Right.
I'm a graduate now. And I'm still working for $7 an hour as an intern at the same company that I worked at, when I was a junior, and still making the same amount of money. But now I'm trying to actually start a life. It's not summer anymore. This is my life now, and just like, okay, I'm gonna try to do it, and I'm gonna try to work my way up, and I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have any contacts in the business. And my advice for people, another piece of advice is, intern. If you're a film student, intern, because if you don't know anyone going in, you got to fix that. And the fastest way to fix it is to be there and meet people. And you're probably not going to get hired if you don't know anybody at first. So being an intern is great because everybody loves free labor.
It's true.
But I remember, I interned at Wilshire Court. I interned at DreamWorks. I interned at Copelson Entertainment for the late Ono Copelson.
I recommend to people, since I've been on the festival circuit, go to film festivals. Meet people at film festivals. First of all, everybody's got a camera in their pocket now. So anybody can just go, when we were getting started, to make a short film was still a production.
It was. I used to tell people, that film is a hard art to pursue because unlike, painting or writing or music or whatever, it takes a small army to execute it. But little by little, that's being taken away. And what used to take thousands of dollars, now you can do with desktop software that's practically freeware if you're just getting started.
You can download an app to do your VFX
and use your cell phone. Cell phones with video cameras in them. That's still, that just didn't exist back then.
That's right.
Cell phones barely existed back then, let alone ones with cameras in them.
That's right.
So it's all changed.
It's easier than ever to create stuff, but it's still as hard as ever to break through and to keep a positive
Well,
attitude.
to keep a positive attitude, and also, I mean, think about it. Now that it's so easy, everyone else is doing it.
Right. So the competition's fiercer than ever before as well.
So it really, yeah, you have to just work harder. But I've made many short films, but again, it was the contacts that I made as a result of the internship, as a result of the job I got because of the internship, as a result of the people I met at the job that I got because of the internship, that led to where I am now, not my short film. The idea that I'm going to make a short film and somebody over at Paramount is going to see it and hire me to direct the next whatever, that might happen for some people, but it didn't happen for me, for sure. And it really happened for most of the people that I know.
So, all right. So let's jump forward then.
Yeah.
So after your time at Wilshire Court, and that company, went under shortly after I left, and maybe around the time that you had left as well. When was your first professional? Someone said, "I'm going to pay you money to direct something."
Well, let's start with the writing, because that came first.
Right.
So at Wilshire Court, I had worked my way up from an intern making $7 an hour to an assistant probably making $8 an hour. And the assistant who I replaced, his name was Clinton. He had left Wilshire Court. He went to an animation company called Nirvana, and then from there ended up at an indie company called Regent, which had just done like Gods and Monsters, and they happened to have this is just like kind of how all of the pieces just happened to fit together neatly. There was a newfangled genre just coming into notice back then called the reality show, and there was this brand new TV show that just started out called Survivor.
Yes,
and I had this idea that I thought, well, what if somebody was on the Survivor Island killing the contestants? I mean, literally, Survivor was in season 1.
Yeah, we had worked. One of the editors of Survivor season 1 did a picture at Wilshire Court.
So I thought to myself, hey, well, let me write a horror movie about a serial killer on the island of Survivor. And so, like I said, this guy Clinton that was my predecessor had gone on, ended up at a company at Regent, and as luck would have it, the head of Regent just happened to own property on an island. And he was shooting and just happened to be looking for scripts that was set on island. And I just happened to have one. And that got me in the door, and it never got made. It went through a lot of rewrites and a lot of strange ideas.
He sold the island.
They ended up taking the reality show component out of it, and it just became it became something else entirely. I think there was a mummy involved at one point, which was far from my slasher on the island idea.
But they had bought that original script.
They didn't actually ever pay me for it, but they developed it.
Okay.
And then one day I got a call from Regent saying, "Hey, can you come by this afternoon?" And I was like, I really don't want to talk about this island thing anymore. I mean, gosh, just give it up already. Fine. I'll come, but I calm down.
And this is after you had written a whole script that they did not pay you for.
Well, I had written the script on spec, and then they had me do copious ends of rewrites about it. So I thought, okay, here we go. Here's another set of notes. Here's another rewrite, whatever.
So wait, so let me ask you this question then. So since this is the very first experience, there must be an initial elation. Holy shit, somebody wants to buy my script.
Yeah, I get the contract. I don't remember ever getting paid. I think the contract said I would get paid when the movie got made, which of course it never did.
So, but what I'm curious about is your mindset as a young professional trying to get your career going, going from I'm excited that someone wants to make a movie out of a script that I wrote to, oh no, these fucking people again. What's that?
Okay,
what's that like?
Okay, so I go in there and I take the script and it's like, great. I've just created the next Friday the 13th, and in my head I'm planning sequels. Like, 2 through 9. This is it. This is going to be my Freddy Krueger. This is going to be my Jason Voorhees. And then it's like, okay, great. Well, okay, we don't really like this reality show thing, so let's make them archaeological students. Okay. Well, we don't really like the serial killer thing, so can it be a mummy? Okay. And, well, can we have them not all really die, but maybe we thought they were dead and they come back at the end? I mean, it was really the kind of note that I was getting. And so you see quickly how creatively you learn how the development process can go wrong. I mean, look, I'm excited to be working with these guys. I was excited to do whatever they asked me for.
Right.
But I was kind of getting a little tired of, going off on, these tangents when, for this thing. I mean, but I was like, okay, we're going to talk about this island thing again.
So at some point you go from the elation and happiness of all, everything I imagine, not only for the script, but they're going to just like at some point the self-preservation kicks in and you're not going to let yourself get stepped on so much.
I was incredibly excited to be working on this. And it was my introduction to the rewrite process. And it was interesting because, well, I shouldn't say, it was my introduction to the rewrite process as a writer. I was working in development. So I was familiar sort of with this process. I kind of knew what to expect because I had been transcribing notes for my bosses, for other writers, never me, but I was familiar with the idea of network notes and studio notes and whatever. And this was now my opportunity to see it. So it was kind of exciting to be going through this on the other side of the table.
Sure.
And I was very grateful. And so when I got the call to go in that day, I assumed, okay, here's going to be another notes meeting, So I went in there and I was not greeted with the normal executive that I had been meeting with. I met with a junior executive that I'd never met before, who worked at Regent, and his name was Jeff Shank. And he said, I said, okay, we're going to talk about the island thing, and he said, no, I have something else I want to talk to you about. I'm like, okay. Are you familiar with the? I don't remember 100%. I think it was in Pennsylvania at that time. There was a Pennsylvania coal mining disaster that had just taken place. And truth be told, not only was I familiar with it, I had been pursuing the rights for my boss at Hearst Entertainment, where I was now working. So I was very familiar with the story. I said, absolutely. He's like, well, we can't afford the right to this, but we kind of want to do, something similar. Can you write a script in 2 weeks? And I was absolutely. I didn't. I had never written a script in 2 weeks of my life, but I said, gosh darn it, I'm going to do this.
Someone asks you that question, say
yes. You say yes. And by the way, that's the lesson. Somebody asks you, you say yes.
Yes.
And you'll figure it out later.
Right.
And I did. I wrote the script in 2 weeks. I'm not going to say it was amazing, but I wrote it in 2 weeks. Then I got some notes and did another pass. And that became my first produced screenplay.
Look at that.
Look at that.
So, I mean, like I said, sometimes it's just a combination of luck and combination of perseverance.
I think being cooperative is very important in this business.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this as someone who has been on both sides of the table.
Collaboration,
listening, taking the notes. I remember very clearly, there was one guy when I was at NYU, I think he worked in that media department with me. And he was working on something, and we started talking about what you want to do one day, whatever. And he's like, I want to make movies. And I said, well, would you go to LA? And he said, no, man, I'm going to stay indie. I'm not going to let anyone tell me what to do. I'm going to make it on my own term. Then I'm going to make movies my way. And look, I don't remember this guy's name,
right?
But I'm going to guess he never made a movie,
right?
Because everyone at some point it's going to have to work with someone else. And what I proved by doing, these rewrites on the horror movie is I can collaborate. I can, I'll take ideas. I'll give ideas. I can work with you. I'm fast. I'm reliable. And so, hey, we need a writer for this coal mining thing. Let's call Peter. I think, that's probably a conversation that took place.
Making yourself available.
And there we go. I mean, now I was like on cloud 9. Absolutely. I mean, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to make a movie. I remember going to meet the line producers from Australia came out. Oh my God, this is it. This is the moment I've been waiting for, at that point, probably 5 or 6 years.
So your career continues to move forward. And this is, like I said, we're pretty much mid-career at this point.
So this was 2002,
so this is still, all right, so this is still very, very, very early.
Still had a day job. And I would have a day job for a while. And that's another thing. Don't expect, just because you have this one film, things are going to change. But I remember I quit when this movie went into production because that meant I was going to get paid. Well, there's no guarantees that money's going to continue. I ran out of money. I needed a job. And so I thus began, then I got another part-time job and another part-time job, trying to sort of support myself while I was writing. I was writing 2 movies a year, but it wasn't enough to really live on.
So after that first one, and you think this is going to be it, and it's not quite it just yet. So how do you deal with the expectations versus reality is one of the things I'm on right now.
Yeah, I remember I was drafting letters like, I really need another job. I can't do this anymore, kind of a thing. And it was just this kind of like sense of entitlement that started to show up, and that was a mistake. And
your own sense of entitlement.
My own sense of, like, well, I deserve another film, and I was working on stuff, but nothing was going. And again, so you don't get paid until the movies go. So, there was one film that was produced a little bit after that was never really officially released in the United States. I have a DVD from Lithuania that was another disaster movie, but I worked at a bank for a while.
And you're still writing this whole
2
time.
movies, yeah, and it became a pattern. It really was 2 movies a year. After that point,
never had any thought. I mean, we might have talked about this years ago and stuff but never any thought to like take one of those and get it made yourself.
I would try. There was a Robin Hood project I was working on for a long time. There were specs that I was doing, but I truth be told, I was being kept busy. I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't doing anything. I would be writing constantly, but it seemed like my pattern was 2 would get produced a year. And it's hard to turn down a gig from somebody like Jeff, who was hiring me reliably, so I could focus on my own thing. I mean, it's like and that pattern continues to this day. It's like I'm very busy. I'm very lucky to be hired to do what I do. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I just need to find a way to make ends meet.
Right.
So I again, and I worked at the bank for quite a while, and they were very kind of cooperative, and that was sort of where I started to get comfortable, because they were very they knew what I was doing. They knew about the they knew about the writing. They knew I needed time. They were very flexible for me. I needed to take time off to go visit that or whatever. They were very cool with that. No hesitation whatsoever. No, like, well, you have to decide. They were no ultimatums. And I think they kind of got a kick out of it.
A little bit too. You got lucky enough to find a job not in the industry,
right,
that gave you the flexibility to work within that.
And I was in administration, so I was doing reports on Excel and stuff. I wasn't like, I wasn't a teller or something. I mean, it was office work, and to be honest with you, I think they kind of thought it was cool. I think they kind of dug the novelty of it.
Right.
And so, I mean, that continued for a while, through the writing, and also as the producing got started. But they had health benefits and stuff like that, so that was good. What ended up happening was, and this is why loyalty is so important, in about 2007, 2008, Jeff left Regent and started his own company. And because I had experience working in development as an assistant and working my way up to story editor, and then working as a development person for the producer, that Jody, who had that deal at Hearst, he asked me to come on board with him. And basically just the 2 of us started doing television movies that were kind of international co-productions, and that was the beginning.
So that's how he was getting the financing for those
films. Yeah, so the first ones that we did, there was a slate of, I think, 3 films that we did with Canada, and they all got premieres on like Lifetime, but they were independents that were Canadian co-productions. But then we were doing a Christmas movie called Christmas Proposal, which we teamed up with a producer named Barry Barnholtz. And that, from there, then we did Dog Who Saved Christmas, and we did a thriller called The Perfect Student.
And you're directing some of these at this point.
I'm not directing any.
You're still not directed any of these yet.
So when we teamed up with Barry Barnholtz to do Christmas Proposal, that was kind of the beginning of what became Hybrid, which is the company today. It's called Hybrid because it was Barnholtz Entertainment and then Arrow Entertainment, which was Jeff's company. Mind you, 2 very small operations coming together to be a slightly less small operation. that literally was Barry, Jeff, myself, and we didn't even have offices together. I mean, Barry had his office, and Jeff and I had our offices, but we were for the first time making movies under one banner, which was hybrid. But talk about directing. So I always wanted to direct. I did the student film, whatever. So going even back to the Island movie, there was no director ever attached to that project. It was never made, but I never was shy about asking. I was like, hey, I can direct this. I could direct it. And so even when I went to that island, I ended up not that movie, but ended up shooting a couple movies there. Writing a couple movies that were shot there. I got to go to set and visit and kind of, shadow the director and learn. I was kind of soaking up this knowledge, and Jeff just never understood why I wanted to direct. And, it's kind of hard to articulate, but it's just like, I was never interested. I'd never really been interested in assembling and getting financing and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to make movies. I wanted to write and direct movies. And I kept asking and asking and asking. And then in 2011, we were getting ready to do the third installment of the Dog Who Saved series. And the director who had done the first two, Mike Pfeiffer, wasn't available to do the third. And Jeff's like, well, okay. When we did the second dog movie, I had to direct some of the voiceover work. Mike was doing another film. And so they said, do you mind going into the audio booth and directing some of the dog voiceovers that we were recording? And they had brought in Paris Hilton to do the dog that our hero falls in love with. And again, Mike was not available, and I had to go in and do it, and I directed Paris Hilton. And the time that I got Paris Hilton to bark like a dog apparently got me some brownie points. And so when the third movie came up, they're like, hey, do you want to, you did so well with the voiceovers, do you want to try doing the film? And so that was The Dog Who Saved Halloween.
And always say yes. You say yes.
I said no.
You said no.
I said no. I said I don't want to do that talking dog movie, whatever. And I remember it was Sean Olsen, another editor that I'd worked with,
right,
who was like, "Are you crazy? You have to do this." Okay, fine. I'll do it.
I'll direct the dog movie.
I'll do the Dog Who Saved Halloween.
You're gonna pull my leg.
And
well, what made you say it? Like, because we had just said that, like, always say yes, and now here you are saying no. Where did you get the balls to do that?
Well, I mean, the dog movies are a very specific thing. I mean, they tell you, for your first, especially for your first film, don't work with children and animals.
Right.
And this was both. And I think I was just kind of, it was somebody else's series, and I was kind of intimidated, and I was very uncertain about it. But, look, you're right. I had to remember my own thing. Never say no. When that break is there, you got to grab it. And I said, fine, I will do this movie. And I remember halfway through the first day of shooting, we were at a dog park in off of like Balboa or something over here in Van Nuys. And I was working with Dean Cain, and I knew these guys because I had been on set for the other two dog movies. So
you had already been shadowing at least.
I knew these actors. Okay. They knew me. I was working with a DP that I had done some short films with and stuff. And I remember that, so this is my very first movie, my very first day of shooting, and I'm halfway through the first day, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. I hate this. This is awful. This is not what I thought it was going to be like.
And this is what, 2011?
2011.
So this is 11 years in LA, 12, 13 years in LA, toiling away at a toy company.
I finally got an opportunity.
Finally got the chance.
And it's like, what if you hate it? Like you finally get your chance, and what if you hate it? And I was just like, I really don't like this.
When you say this, do you mean directing in general?
I was not comfortable. I was very nervous.
Because here I am at the beginning saying part of what got you to where you are today is the confidence of knowing what you wanted to do.
And it's like, what if you don't? What if you get into a situation where you don't have the confidence? What if
And people will smell that and
people will
see
smell
it
that, and
eat
oh
you
my God,
alive.
I smell it. So if I can smell it, they must smell it.
It's what's actually kept me from pursuing a directorial career.
Is it really?
Yeah, I've absolutely. Like, I never, I mean, we taught, that's why I was an editor when I got started, and I never really wanted to direct. But then after a while, and now I'm kind of getting back into it, 20 years later. But at some point, I had, and we had done our shorts over the years, and I've done my shorts. But I was like, if I get on set and I don't know what I'm doing, and I've never worked with, a name actor, a Dean Cain, like, even though, I mean, but if I'm, and I don't know what I'm doing, they're going to eat me alive. And I just said, I'm just going to go into post and be in a quiet, dark room for the rest of the movie. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I never really, even now, after my film's gotten some, buzz, to not die. People were like, you should get an agent. You should do that. I'm just like, I don't know if I want to be, I didn't go to school for that, So it's one of the things that kind of kept me away from it.
I know I wasn't happy, but I stuck with it. I said, I committed to do this. I'm going to do this. What am I going to do? Quit? And no, I'm going to do this. And I did, and I got through the film, and I put it together, and I thought, well, this is actually, not so bad. And then I screened it for Jeff and Barry, and then I realized I'd made a completely steaming piece of dog shit. And I was like, oh, well, that didn't go so well. And it was really it was an experience because I didn't expect the film to be torn apart the way that it was in that first screening by the producers.
Okay.
And I kind of, I thought I was going to get kind of like a pat on the back and here you go. And it was like, no, it was a whole new thing. Something new I'd never been exposed to before, which was the film notes part,
And you must be thinking, well, no one's going to give me another chance at this.
I thought that. I was like, oh my God, I've screwed up. And I really didn't get another chance until, again, there was another film that Mike Pfeiffer was too busy to do. And so that was 12 Wishes of Christmas, which, I thought came out a little bit better. And then there was another film that Mike Pfeiffer was too busy to do. That was Christmas Twister. But
you're not complaining at this point.
No,
They're having you back.
No, by the time I got to Christmas Twister, I was like,
hey, I want him to be busy. Like, you can go send him on vacation.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I never had another day like that first one. I mean, I think you just kind of like start to panic, and I went on, and I met so many wonderful people making that movie, and I got to work with Lance Henriksen and everything, and you just kind of, okay, this is what it's going to be like, and you kind of like it, and it's like I am now in control of this, and it becomes more about, okay, what were the mistakes that I made, and how can I do better, and how do I make sure that these ideas for shots that I have actually make it, and it's hard because especially movies at this level, there's an incredible time pressure. These movies are made very quickly. You don't have room for mistakes, and it's ironic because oftentimes, you're starting out, so you get, you don't have a lot of time, but it's almost the opposite. You almost need someone with the experience to make movies at this level because you do have to move so fast. If you don't have the confidence, if you don't have the experience, you're not going to be able to cope with such a fast-paced environment. You're going to lock up.
And that's funny that you mentioned that too, because I was actually thinking about this morning. The independent filmmakers that I've been meeting, the community that I've been hanging out in, when you're making your own, I was literally just thinking about this morning. When you're making your own movies, however, if someone's paying for them or not, but when you're making your own stuff, there's very rarely deadlines. Maybe you want to hit a deadline for a festival or something like that.
Very good point.
But a lot of people, especially in documentaries where they take 6-7 years anyway, but even in the narrative world, in the low budget, micro budget space, there's no deadlines. So people just take their time. Yeah, they think it's going to be their calling card, and that's absolutely that's what we want. We want everyone's success, but you can take your time with it enough that at this other level you have to not answer to other people, and there's other people, other considerations. You gotta pick up the pace, and that's a whole different. You don't even have time to let it depress you or worry you. You just have to kind of go and do the work like a craftsman at that point. Like, I have to build this house, so I'm going to put it together.
Right. I think it's learning how to balance and make the most of that time is the most important thing. And learning not only to make your day, but to make a good day. And that was something that took, it still took a while. There was a lot of compromising. There's still compromises every day, but, I feel like I've gotten to a point where, I know how to set a proper expectation level. And there's times where you really need to cover a lot out of a scene, and there's times you really don't. And there's times that, you have time to spend with the actors, and there's times you don't. And, I think, the best experiences are when you have people that are used to that pace, used to that schedule, and they come in and they can do it. And it's not like, oh, I'm used to doing, 3 pages of dialogue a day and you're giving me 10. It still happens, but you kind of work through it, and you just make sure that everybody's on the same page. You can't end up in a situation where you have, like, let's say a cinematographer who's an absolute perfectionist and needs to take 30 minutes to light a shot. It's like, I've got an hour to shoot this scene.
Right.
And now you just took a half an hour to light the first shot of many. It's like, that's the type of person that's not going to work in this environment.
When you're on a set like that, how
Mhm.
do you find your voice to be, because listen, you're a nice guy, and I've never really seen you yell at anyone. I've never seen you really argue with anyone. How do you find your voice,
Mhm.
when it's this high pressure, fast paced environment, to tell people you got 15 minutes to set up the shot, not 30?
I do pretty bad with pressure. I'll admit, I'm not the best under pressure, and I do let it get to me more than it should, and I've gotten better at it. Losing your cool or whatever is not going to help
Doesn't
bring it
accomplish
back.
anything.
You can get frustrated, and but ultimately, what you have to learn is your demeanor affects the demeanor of everybody else. If you've got an actress that's in a bad mood, or a director that's in a bad mood, or a cinematographer that's in a bad mood, it will impact the environment on the set and can make it an unpleasant place. And that's important. And it's important to keep that set as happy as possible. And sometimes I'm successful at it, and sometimes I'm not. And it all depends on all the variables and that kind of thing.
Sure.
But I've had people visit that. This is a wonderful set. It's so happy. Everyone's so happy to be here. And I've been on sets where people have visited that I had to get out of there.
No, well,
I
that's
could feel it.
unfortunate.
I could feel the tension. I could feel, that the morale was low. And maybe it's me, maybe it's not. Maybe it's someone else. But it's like, yelling is never really gonna help. It's not, and it's human to lose your temper.
Sure.
But I try really hard not to.
So now that you have a few movies under your belt, and as a director, and even more
Mhm.
as a writer and a producer, put yourself back in your NYU shoes.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there was a long journey to get you to this place.
Yeah.
The career that you envisioned for yourself as a college student, as someone just getting started out, has it gone the way you wanted it to go? Are you pleased? How do you feel about how your career has gone so far?
Look, it's easy to say, well, I wanted to make, I thought I'd be making big theatrical films. You know, I thought it's easy to say, well, I was really hoping that, to be here by now or there by now. But, you really have to look back and say, you know what? I am lucky to be where I am. I am absolutely lucky. And I would be a fool not to acknowledge that and appreciate everything that I've got, every opportunity I've had, every person I've met. So it's just kind of
So
interesting.
you don't feel disappointed that you haven't made a movie for Warner Brothers yet?
No, I don't. I think it's important not to be. I really do. I think,
And it's so easy to let that get to you. It's so easy in this business to compare where you are to everybody else, social media, all of you just get to see everybody's successes and failures more than ever before. So it's so
it's
easy
human.
to do that.
It's
And
human to do that. I remember. So I'm working at Wolf Record, and I'm making $7 an hour, and I'm an intern. And one morning, because back then they were actually printed, trade subscriptions, like Variety, Hollywood Reporter. They were actually printed on paper.
We really need to remind people we're not that old.
We've
been talking about all these things that didn't exist when we came up, but we are not that old. We are early 40s.
When I was your age, Sonny. So anyway, yeah. So I would get to work early, and I would open up the thing. And I remember one day I opened up the trades, and on the front, actually I didn't have to open it up. It was on the cover. There was a student that I had gone to NYU with, who was in one of my classes, who had his student film had been seen by somebody at New Line, and New Line gave him a deal to make a feature film. And I remember I was way too jealous, way too envious, and I really let it get to me, and it disturbed me in all the ways that it shouldn't. And that's absolutely the wrong reaction, 100% the wrong reaction. And these are things that should be celebrated and happy, and to somebody who's feeling that, knock it off.
Yeah, how do you
knock
fight
it off?
That? It's so hard to do.
Be happy, because you know what, they did the same thing you did. They were, if he can, what you should be saying is, if that guy can make it, I can make it. And fight on, and good for him. And I follow, I've watched his films, I've seen all of them. Good for him. Really good for him.
There really is room. It's a common theme of the show, and just of everything that I say to people. There is room for everyone to succeed here. Like you said, with all the streaming, there is more avenues for people to get their work out there than ever before.
Use it as
you just
inspiration.
Can't let anyone else's success, even if it looks like someone just woke up one day, wrote a script, sold it to New Line, and boom.
They didn't.
They didn't do it that way.
No, and somebody brought up a good point. I remember reading an article about this very topic, and I'm not getting discouraged. And it brought up a good point. Like, if you really look into a story, if you really look into an overnight success story, you will see, you can kind of start to feel the connection. Well, so and so was an assistant at an agency. That means that they met somebody, that they knew somebody who happened to, like I did.
And they were probably spending late nights doing all of that.
Absolutely. There is no such thing as an overnight success, and you can't expect it. And there's actually, it's funny, there was, and this is, people fall victim to this. I mean, not so much anymore, because I think, we've kind of, I think that today's generation have moved beyond Spielberg, but our generation was very much like, pre-Tarantino, whatever, it's very much Spielberg. That was your, he was the guy. Like, that's what you wanted to be him. And the story was that, he broke into Universal and took over got off the tram one day and hid in the bathroom until the tram left. And then he found an office that was empty and claimed it, and went to work every day and just took over this empty office. And I mean, just these crazy stories. Like, and he made Jaws when he was like 15. I'm exaggerating. He was like 22. But the point is, like, if I'm 25 and I haven't made Jaws yet, I am a loser.
Right.
And that is absolutely wrong.
I really want people to get out of that kind of mindset.
There's always going to be there's always going to be a Spielberg or a Damien Chazelle, or somebody who's just a wonderkind and comes out and does it. But you know what? That's not the end of it. And there's so many opportunities out there. And look, there are people that would kill to be where I am, and I would be it shame on me for not recognizing that. And so that's what I have to tell people. Not just a funny story on that topic. So I had joined the Producers Guild a couple of years ago, and they have a mentor program. And I thought to myself, oh, well, this is an opportunity to learn from an experienced producer, whatever. And this is kind of the wake up call that I got. So I went up to the person that ran the mentor program, and I introduced myself, and it's like my resume, whatever. It's like, I'm really interested in being a part of it. And said, okay, I think I can get a lot out of this. That absolutely, I will find you some mentees to learn from you. And I was like, no. I got your mentee. I want a mentor. Right. But the point is, like, don't take anything for granted. I am incredibly fortunate, and although I don't look at it, you teasingly, big producer, director, whatever you called me. But it's like to so many people out there, I am. But I'm making a living. I mean, I may not be living in Malibu with the, you know, the beachfront property and the Porsche, but you know, I'm making a living, and I'm making a living doing what I want to do, and
are you happy doing it?
I'm very happy.
Ask everybody, you're happy.
I mean, tomorrow I'm gonna. I've got a new story idea that I came up with today that Jeff and I were talking about. That, you know, we you know, we might just kind of fast track and shoot very quickly, very soon. And tomorrow I get to go to the office and plan that story out. How cool is that?
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, you know, and that's
cool.
what I'm gonna, you know. So I'm excited. You know, I'm excited about that opportunity. I'm excited. I finished the script today and turned it in. And yeah, sure, I'll probably get some notes, but you know, I got to write a pretty cool thriller, and yeah, I mean, any job will get tedious just in the repetition of it, but damn it, that's cool.
And you're happy with where things are, where your career is right now. You're right where you want to be, and you're pleased with all of it.
Everything is a step. So, you know, Dog Who Saved Halloween, little 10-day movie made for probably the craft service budget of my last film, you know, and then, you know, okay, that was a 10-day movie. And then the next couple films were like 11 days. Then maybe there was a 12-day. And now you're getting into more network stuff. Like do a movie for Ion, and do a movie for Lifetime, do a movie for Hallmark. You do, you know, and so every film, you know, you're constantly getting, you're just setting your sights, you know, higher and higher and higher. And then, you know, Netflix. It's like, okay, this is, you know, what's the next level? And just, you know, I've never been satisfied with just staying in one place. I feel like I'm constantly growing and doing better movies and different movies and reaching different levels. And I think as long as that continues, I'll be fine.
That's great. All right. Well, Peter Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us. What are the most current movies out, and where can we find them?
Fatal Affair will be on Netflix probably this summer. Very excited about it. It's got an amazing cast. Nia Long, just a wonderful actress. We've got Omar Epps. We've got Stephen Bishop, who has a big fan from Imposters. It's a good one. Very excited to be sharing that with people, and that'll be out this summer.
All right. Well, stay tuned this summer. Coming to Netflix, Fatal Affair. And Peter Sullivan, thank you again for joining us, dear friend of mine. And we can't wait to see the next one, and, you know, just keep putting one foot in front of the other and making movies.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
And there you have it. My interview with Peter Sullivan. We had a good conversation. I know it wasn't usually, you know, I like to go a little bit more onto the mental health side of things, but he's had a very long career in Hollywood so far. He's been working for over 20 years, and, you know, just his entire, you know, career path, I think, is of some interest to you guys, trying to make it, you know, as independent film directors, trying to make it, and the struggle, you know, the daily struggle of just trying to get through and, you know, be creative and make something and make a career in this business. So that was Peter Sullivan. We have some more exciting interviews coming up for you over the next couple of weeks. I've got them all in the can. Stay tuned. I don't know which one's going to come up next. I'm still kind of shuffling the schedule coming up. But I will have another episode coming out to you guys next week. Stay tuned for more information about that. And we'll be back next week with more of Season 2 of Head Above Water. Thanks for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.